Guys, you should be so proud of me. Baby played her first horror game since Luigi's Mansion. And yes, it was labeled horror, so whoop. If you're new here, I'm a chicken shit. I don't handle horror well at all. It is Lady Pelvic with Pelvic Gaming, here to talk to you about Parasite Eve, which came out March 29th, 1998 for the original PlayStation. Thankfully, this game was more creepy than it was jump scary, which I handled quite well. Our story starts off on Christmas Eve in 1997 in the city that never sleeps, New York City. You're Aya Brea, a rookie NYPD officer on a date to the opera. Everything is fine, we get quality acting, the lead singer begins to sing, and well, let's just say this opera was lit. So, as you can imagine, after seeing this, I will never be attending an opera ever in my life, just in case the lead actress turns out to be a fucking embodiment of a parasite. This game wastes absolutely no time in freaking you out, feeling powerless, confused, and frankly, a little scared. Seeing bodies burn up around you, and oddly enough, you're the only one not in flames. After complete chaos erupts, Aya approaches the singer, who tells her she's going to awaken soon. Her cells are communicating. Again, this game really builds up a great sense of mystery in such a short period of time. After a quick battle with the actress who names herself as Eve, she flees and Aya chases after her, while experiencing bizarre flashbacks and seeing a familiar child. Aya, wanting to know more about her cells, she corners Eve several times, attempting to bring this unusual criminal to justice. Parasite Eve's opening is one of the strongest openings I've seen in any game, and as the game develops, it slowly feeds you more information, with the occasional lengthy information dump on mitochondria, or the parasitic cells. Characters you meet are great. We have Daniel, a single father with a son who's getting over a nasty divorce, and Aya's best friend, and yes, I totally ship it. Daniel is the motherfucking realist. You see so many sides of him in such a short time, and anytime Daniel was on the scene, I felt my back was protected. We have the Japanese scientist, Kunihiko Maeda, who came all the way from Japan to research more about Eve. I read that Kunihiko actually brought people who were unfamiliar with Parasite Eve, the book, up to speed with the parasitic events in Japan, as Parasite Eve the game is actual sequel to the book by Hideki Senna. Because this game takes place over the span of 6 days, the pacing seemed off toward the end. The first areas were pretty straightforward and quick to zip through, broken up with grim visuals, until the last area, it felt like the developers noticed you could fly through the story and levels, so they made the last dungeon extra long and grueling. It was painfully obvious the sudden stretch in the game. Despite some of these flaws, I really enjoyed the story of this game, it being particularly refreshing. For me, Parasite Eve takes place in a real city, with real landmarks, and with relatable everyday conveniences like cars and elevators. Instead of fantasy, it was sci-fi dealing with cells and rapid mutations. Most of you guys know, sci-fi isn't really my cup of tea, but Parasite Eve's compelling narrative managed to hook me in. The gameplay, however, I had some mixed feelings on. My biggest issue might seem silly, but it makes a world of difference, is the walking speed is fucking painfully slow. Lord, it is so goddamn slow. I can't think of a game where you move so slow. It feels like you're not making any efficient progress. Aya felt like fucking molasses, and in battles, it didn't feel like she moved any quicker. Battles are triggered by walking in a certain area. You'll hear a heartbeat and a flash, and enemies will appear. Cue the awesome battle music and begin the fight. The entire game you are solo, which I really appreciated that they gave a sound reason as to why Aya had to move alone, which only added to the horror. You move around the field dodging enemy attacks until your action gauge fills up. Then you can attack, use an item, switch equipment, or use parasite energy, or PE, which is this game's mana system. Your PE gauge slowly refills as the battle goes on, but know the more you use PE, the slower the bar recharges, so use your PE wisely. Like, really wisely, because PE saves your life. You have melee and ranged weapons, really just guns, each having their own strength, like how many bullets they can hold, how many rounds they can fire per action, and so on. Some pieces of equipment have empty special effects slots, which you can use tools to fuse weapons together, raising their stats and gaining special effects. Adding more special effects slots requires a tune-up at the weapons office at the NYPD. Customization was nearly mandatory if you wanted to survive the unforgiving boss battles. I say nearly mandatory because I didn't mess with the customization as much as I probably should have. I low-key played this game on hard mode. Speaking on boss battles, they were tough. These parasitic creatures were out for blood. Even after certain boss battles, there was an extra bit you had to do, like run off a building to escape the incoming missile, or else you die and have to fight the boss all over. Also, in New Game Plus, all the enemies are a little stronger, and a new optional dungeon called the Chrysler Building unlocks. It's randomly generated floors where you run into bosses every so often who aim to tear you to bits. The point of this dungeon is to get the true ending. But beware, while I never plunged deep enough into the Chrysler Building to make it to the true final boss, know that this final boss has 5 times more health than the original final boss, so good luck with that. Parasite Eve doesn't require a lot of grinding, as you level up rather quickly. I felt I could smoothly go through the story, running into the occasional snag or two. Going through the levels, while intricately detailed and creating a great, eerie setting, some interactive objects blended into the scenery and made it very difficult to advance. Imagine running around a level for 30 minutes without a clue, only later to find out it's because you didn't investigate a seemingly normal-looking desk. Even picking up items was a chore and had me smashing the X button. How the camera was handled was a very interesting and creative design choice. In order to push this game as a cinematic experience, when you entered the different areas, the angles would drastically change, sometimes for better or for worse. The camera can make it difficult judging how close or how far enemies were, therefore giving a bit of artificial difficulty. Or other times it really escalated the suspense and incoming doom just right. The graphics didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. This game came out 2 years before Final Fantasy IX, which I wasn't so fond of the graphics due to its shifty pixels. But Parasite Eve, and the lack of shiftiness, I wasn't troubled by it at all. Don't get me wrong, they certainly had age, but I wasn't gouging out my eyes. Where Parasite Eve excels is the cinematic cutscenes, which I found super delightful. I was invested, and again, coming out in 1998, they achieved some great moments by really pushing these graphics. The cutscenes were perfectly used to show off the severity or creepiness of a scene, really drilling that horror and carnage home. These scenes were masterfully split into the gameplay. They were neither too long or too short, it didn't feel like I was watching an entire movie, nor were there too few. It was just the right amount, along with being perfectly executed. Every time a cutscene played, I could not look away. They were just so outlandish and gruesome. For its time, fuck it, even by today's standards, in terms of timing and content, they fucking nailed it. Lastly, we have the music, which honestly is my favorite part about this game. Not gonna lie, I didn't expect much from a horror game. I figured I'd hear ambient sounds, trying to create suspense and mystery, the wind howling, heavy breathing, distant footsteps. No. Instead, I was pleasantly surprised by trance-infused opera melodies and uncomfortable piano work that could only be achieved by the legendary Yoko Shimomura, mostly known for her work in Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. She blew my expectations out of the water. Every track served a purpose and served it well. Whether it was adding a sense of mystery, urgency, the bustling of New York City, the battle theme is excellent, and when you're exploring, the transitional heartbeat beats, and you're in battle with trance in the background. I mean, man, I could rant about how good this entire soundtrack is forever, but I'm going to leave you with my favorite track. which is difficult because I have multiple favorites depending on my mood, but here is Influence of the Deep, which you literally just heard in the opening, but we're gonna listen to it again because it's the best. Before I do play it, there is an in-game version which sadly had to replace the actual opera vocals with artificial vocals so they could fit it all on the disc. Have a listen. This is the CM version, which I believe was for television when they were advertising this game. This is with the original singer, with stunning pipes, Judith Saria Paskowitz. I apologize if I butchered her name, and this version packs a hell of a punch. Fucking rendition? Like, it's a shame that they couldn't put that in the actual game. Parasite Eve scores an 8 out of 10. One of my biggest issues is the walking speed. I know it seems trivial and minute, but drove me mad. Really tested my patience along with interacting with the environment. And the pacing of the game becoming incredibly unbalanced when it came to the final dungeon. And as someone who didn't read the book, the background knowledge of Aya's family kind of seemed shoehorned in there, but it did prove necessary to the story. The cinematic experience was incredible, loved it even by today's standards, was totally engrossed. The gameplay was fine, not my speed, although I do have to complain about the Parasite energy buffs. How short they lasted seemed a little unfair. The music though was straight fire. Literally. Parasite Eve has one of the best gaming soundtracks of all time, criminally underrated. So with that all said, Parasite Eve does end on a cliffhanger of sorts, which makes me want to play the second one. I'm probably going to play the second one, which I hear is a Resident Evil 2 clone-ish, which means nothing to me considering I don't play those games. And apparently Third Birthday, the third entry to the Parasite Eve series, is just so bad no one mentions it. Every time I bring it up, Parasite Eve 2 is mentioned, but Third Birthday, we don't talk about that apparently. Thank you so much for watching. Top box are more reviews, and the bottom box is my Let's Play channel where we're playing Danganronpa. Thank you again, and be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Question is, what is a sequel to the game that disrespected its predecessor? I feel Parasite Eve 2 and 3 kind of disrespect 1, it seems like. For me, it's Tales of Symphonia, Dawn of a New World. That game is garbage.